Tuesday morning arrived with a quiet, heavy tension. I waited in the living room, staring at the muted television, pretending to scroll through emails, pretending to be calm. When Olivia finally appeared in the doorway, dressed sharply, hair perfectly in place, almost too perfect, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Her eyes were steady, but there was a flicker of something I couldn't read. Guilt? Fear? Or calculation? "I thought we should talk," I said, keeping my voice low, measured. Not too soft, not too harsh, just enough to show that I was ready, but not desperate. "Okay," she replied, her tone neutral, almost rehearsed. "But there's a lot you need to understand." I nodded, then explained. Start from the beginning. What followed wasn't the apology I had imagined, nor the tears I secretly hoped for. It was a confession of a scope I couldn't have foreseen. Olivia admitted that the affair wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It had been deliberate, months in the making, a way to test boundaries, to feel desired outside our marriage. She spoke calmly, even casually, detailing encounters, texts, and half-truths she had woven into her days while I worked, fixed, and provided everything she wanted. For a moment, I thought I might break down. The betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in the meticulous planning, the way she had made a life beside mine, while still pretending to be a wife. Each word she spoke felt like a knife turning slowly, deliberately, inside my chest. But then I caught myself. Anger flared, yes, but not in rashness. It was sharp, focused, like ice. "You don't get to speak to me like this," I said, finally. "Not after what you've done. Not after everything you've taken for granted." She blinked, perhaps expecting me to crumble, to beg, to forgive. But I didn't. I stood, walked toward the kitchen table, and placed my hand firmly on the surface. "This ends today, Olivia. Whatever you were planning, whatever story you've been telling yourself, it ends. You need to know the consequences of your actions." Her eyes widened slightly, but she remained silent. That silence was more powerful than any argument. It was a mirror reflecting back the choices she had made. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You think I don't know about Mason?" I said, the name hanging in the air. She paled. "What? How?" "You don't get to lie to me anymore," I said. I followed the signs. The late nights, the unusual messages, the little hints you left behind. I don't need proof. I just need truth. And now you're going to give it. For the first time, the carefully constructed wall she had built around her deception wavered. Her voice trembled slightly as she admitted everything. The meetings, the messages, the weekend trips, even the small gifts meant for him. Each revelation was worse than the last. But strangely, the shock didn't weaken me. Instead, it clarified my path. I realized then that my peace would not come from confrontation alone. It would come from action, from reclaiming control of the life I had built and refusing to let someone else's betrayal define me. "You've made your choice," I said, voice calm but cutting. "Now I'm making mine." I reached for my phone and began canceling the joint accounts, freezing the credit cards, ensuring that she could no longer manipulate the resources we shared. Not in anger, not in revenge, but in quiet, calculated finality. Olivia's face drained of color. "You can't." "I can," I interrupted, "because I am done letting this define me. You wanted secrecy, lies, and manipulation. Fine, but I choose clarity, truth, and my own life." Over the next few hours, I methodically secured everything. The car leases, the shared subscriptions, even the minor utilities, all under my control. It was tedious, frustrating, but it felt like power returning to me piece by piece. Finally, she stood there, stunned, realizing that her carefully orchestrated plans had no effect. Her calm demeanor shattered, replaced by panic and pleading. "Ethan, please. I didn't mean..." I shook my head. "No more words. No more excuses. You set the rules, and I followed them. Now you live with the consequences. Whatever happens next, lawyers, discussions, negotiations, that's your path. I've already started mine." The evening fell into a tense silence. She left the house eventually, carrying only the belongings she had packed, and I watched from the doorway, feeling an unexpected weight lift from my shoulders. The home felt larger, emptier, but somehow freer. For the first time in months, I felt clarity, like the world had shifted, giving me room to breathe, to think, to live without the constant tension of lies. As I sat down later, I reflected on the events, on betrayal, the lies, the calculated charm she had wielded, and the audacity it took to think she could manipulate me further. And yet, despite everything, I felt no desire for revenge beyond the restoration of balance. No shouting, no violence, just decisive action, calm resolve, and a realization that I was no longer a participant in her deceit. The truth of the situation was shocking, yes, painful beyond words, and it would take time to process fully. But I had emerged from it with something far more valuable than anger, self-respect, awareness, and the understanding that betrayal, no matter how intimate or unexpected, could not steal the core of who I was, only challenge me to reclaim it. By the end of that day, I had made my decision. The marriage, as I had known it, was over, but I was not broken. I was awake, alert, and ready to step into a life I had always wanted but had allowed someone else's deception to obscure. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely again, knowing that I'd faced the ultimate betrayal and survived it intact, with my dignity, my power, and my life wholly my own. Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I was at my desk on Monday morning when my phone buzzed. A simple notification, but the name on the screen made my heart pause. Olivia, my wife. We've been married for 10 years, and for most of that time, I thought I knew her moods, her laughter, the way she stirred the coffee just so in the morning. But that assumption had begun to crumble months ago, little by little, like a wall left to weather. The text itself was unnerving in its brevity. I'll explain later. No context, no hint of urgency, no sign that anything was amiss, at least not on the surface. But I felt in my chest, heavy and sharp, like an anchor. I stared at the words for a long moment, letting them sink in. I didn't reply immediately. There was no rush, and I didn't want to show panic. But curiosity and dread gnawed at me. Finally, I typed back, as casually as I could manage. Okay, whenever you're ready. Hours passed, each tick of the clock amplifying the silence between us. Olivia came home later than usual, her hair slightly messy from the wind, her expression guarded. She kissed me lightly, just enough to be polite, not enough to convey intimacy, and went straight to the kitchen. I followed, trying to sound normal. How was work? She shrugged. Fine. Nothing more. Her eyes avoided mine. I knew that look, though I tried to deny it. The subtle distance, the coldness behind the gaze, the way someone who's hiding something suddenly moves through familiar spaces, as if they don't belong there anymore. Dinner was quiet. She picked at her food, scrolling through her phone between bites. I wanted to ask again, what's going on? But my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I watched her in silence, noting every detail. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way she exhaled sharply whenever I tried to make conversation, the faint scent of perfume that didn't belong to her usual routine. By 10 that night, I could no longer ignore the pull in my chest, the unease that refused to settle. I sat on the couch, trying to think logically, trying to prepare myself for whatever she was about to reveal. When she finally spoke, her words came softly, almost apologetically, but they hit like a hammer. I haven't been faithful. I froze. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Her eyes were on hers, but I could feel the weight of the confession pressing down, solid and undeniable. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to unravel the truth in a torrent of anger. But instead, I found myself sitting there, breathing shallowly, trying to comprehend the calm delivery of the most devastating words I'd ever heard. She continued, detailing the affair in disjointed fragments. A colleague from work, a few lunches that turned into dinners, a secret weekend trip she hadn't mentioned. Each sentence carved deeper, and I realized that for months, maybe even a year, she had been living a double life right under my nose. I felt anger rise, but it was mingled with more profound, quieter sensation, disbelief. How could someone you shared everything with, your home, your trust, your nights, turned so coldly toward you without warning. I wanted to leave, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of betrayal. But I stayed. I listened, trying to understand not because I care about the details. I didn't. But because I needed to see her face, to measure her eyes for any sign of remorse, to find a trace of the woman I thought I knew. There was none. Only tired eyes, averted gaze, and a faint tremor of guilt she tried desperately to mask. After she left the room, ostensibly to do the dishes, I stayed seated on the couch, my mind racing. The silence in the house suddenly felt louder, every tick of the clock echoing the betrayal I couldn't shake. My thoughts spiraled through possibilities, revenge, confrontation, the end of everything I had built, and then a different kind of clarity settled over me. A sharp, precise realization that no amount of confrontation could reclaim the trust lost. It had gone, like water slipping through fingers. I didn't move when she returned. She didn't press me for a response, didn't even glance at me. She simply continued as though nothing had changed, the same routines, the same small gestures. But the invisible line between us had been severed. The weight of what she'd done pressed on me, heavy and suffocating. But somewhere beneath the initial shock, a strange sense of resolve began to form. I spent the night replaying every moment I'd ignored, every small sign I'd brushed off, every quiet instinct telling me something was off. And as dawn crept through the blinds, illuminating the living room in pale gray light, I realized that my life, as I had known it, was over. There was no dramatic fight, no shouted words, no storm of tears. Just a text, a confession, and a world quietly reshaped in betrayal. I knew then that the decisions I made in the next few days would determine whether I became a victim of circumstance or reclaimed my life entirely. But even as the thought took root, a shadow of uncertainty lingered. Would she apologize? Would she explain more? Could there be a chance to salvage anything? I didn't know. And that uncertainty, that fragile tension, was almost unbearable. By Monday evening, I made my choice. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead. I would let her words guide my actions, but I would not let them dictate my peace. And as I sent her one last text that night, short and measured, "We need to talk tomorrow, face to face," I felt the first spark of control returning. But little did I know, the conversation she had planned would push me further than I had imagined, into a spiral of revelations, shocks, and betrayals that would change everything.